Hello, my name is Charles Baker, and this is my game pitch for the game called Sundered Truths for CSC 371 game design. The basic synopsis of the game is that it is a Souls-like action-adventure game set in an area tainted by the Being, a powerful entity who taints and takes control of those who stray too near. The player will utilize quick dodges, counterattacks, and melee strikes to chain together movements to fight enemies and bosses. In order to stop the spread of the influence of the being, you must uncover the truth about what it is. But as you get closer to the being, the more powerful those under its influence become. The genre is an action adventure game, overarching. It is going to be very much Souls-like in its combat and gameplay. However, it's also going to have adventure story aspects like Zork trying to figure out what to do next. And then also, it's going to have some interactive narrative aspects to it where some choices that you can make in the game will affect the boss that you fight at the end. The target audience is overarching for Soulsborne enjoyers. This game was heavily influenced by Bloodborne in its playstyle. And it's also for people who enjoy lore, finding out new information on the settings, the enemies, and the NPC. And also for game story enjoyers, specifically like one game I've played called Cloud Climber on Steam. It's basically a short sequential game that kind of just gets you invested into the setting of the world and trying to figure out what happened to make the world like this. Three core mechanics of the game. The first is the most obvious combat abilities. It's hand-to-hand combat. The base moves are all available from the beginning. This is so that as the player progresses through the game, they don't just level up their equipment to get better, they actually get better at playing the game, and therefore it's a more personal win when they get something right. There's dashing, which is a sidestep with invincibility frames, and then there's also a parry, which staggers enemies and allows for openings. There's also two reinforcing mechanics that I would like to add. The first is a rally system called Defiance. Basically, after you get hit, then damage is dealt to you, you can heal back some of that damage from doing damage yourself to enemies. I got this idea from Bloodborne. They have a similar system. There's also going to be an encouragement system for fast-paced combat called Flow. This is where consecutive attacks give a temporary boost to not just your speed in combat, but also the damage you do, etc. Um, this removes some of the friction from the combat system and allows you to feel more fluid in your attacks and for it to feel almost like a dance rather than a combat experience. Lets you feel in the flow of the combat. The goals of the game. Obviously, beat the final boss. That's the main one. However, as you're getting to the final boss, you need to uncover lore, looking for the secrets behind the place that you're in and what's going on there and how did it get like this, and also exploring different endings to beat the boss. There's going to be a couple different bosses that you could get depending on the things you find in the game. The core game loop is going to be you start exploring an area. In that area, you find enemies. After you defeat those enemies, you can find lore in that area. And then when you rest, you unlock abilities. The rules respawning, you can set respawn points across the uh, course of the game. Um, these are going to occur at these things called idols, and you die once reaching zero health, and you'll respawn at the last idol you slept at or meditated at. Upgrades, meditating after defeating certain enemies like mini bosses will allow you to use some of their special abilities that each mini boss has. They're just going to have a special combat move, and you can assign that to yourself after you defeat them. However, you can only equip one at a time. Killing mini bosses will also grant permanent buffs as a way to scale the character throughout the game. And healing, the entire healing system is based around Defiance. Even the consumable items as replenishable heals that the player carries will only grant them Defiance, and then therefore they will have to fight to get their health back up to a certain level. The narrative. So the background of the world, technology is very important in this story. So there are things like mathematics, science, alchemy, and philosophy. However, there's nothing like steam engines or electricity or modern physics yet. So it's about 1550 to 1650 feel of human history. This is not the Earth; it's a magical world, and because of this, this magic system called the Aether. Um, think about midichlorians from Star Wars, but instead of just moving objects, they actually alter the physical forms of the objects, and they influence the actual world around them and like the shapes of things. The people in this world know that the Aether exists, but they haven't mastered or explored it very much. And because of the Aether being in this world, religion is huge in this story setting. Hardcore religions are more numerous and popular. Uh, think similar to Taoist and Buddhist monks, but instead of personal things, it's based around the Aether overarching. In that aspect, there's a religion called Yagrism, which is a semi-popular ancient religion in this world that believes the Aether has a will of its own, and that the Aether sort of moves towards peace and tranquility. And if you can connect with it, you can find peace and tranquility yourself. Yagists, who are the people that follow this religion, live in temples and communities away from other uh, settlements of people. Yagist temples are constructed into the sides of mountains underground because they believe that the aether comes from the earth. And so the closer you get to the earth, the more aether you can experience. Yagists use meditation to become closer to the aether as a way to become peaceful themselves. And they practice things such as medicine, agriculture, craftsmanship, and martial arts because they need to not only have their community be propped up by themselves, but also defend their community. And some that have mastered certain things are sent on pilgrimages to share information and communicate with other Yagist temples. The driving purpose and the main theme of this game is going to uncover secrets to find out what the being is after you come across its repercussions and figure out how it came to be in your home temple. You have to find out what its motivations are, what it plans to do, and you can either support or oppose the being. You can look for ways to strengthen the main antagonist if you decide to support it, or if you decide to oppose it, you have to look for ways to destroy it. Um, if you support it, it's based around the theme, the idea that peace in the world is worth it, even if you have to force it onto people and you get rid of their freedom of life and choice. However, if you oppose it, it's you standing for still peace, but peace among people is meaningful because it is a personal choice that somebody makes. The player character themselves, they are a Yagist sent on a pilgrimage. The player will play an ex-mercenary from peace as a Yagist after suffering from PTSD in their realm. And they became a master in martial arts and meditation after decades of being a Yagist. They left their home temple for 2 years to visit others and teach what he's learned. Um, and some of the motivation for him throughout the game is their past experiences of choosing a different lifestyle, which is why they're opposing the being, and also avenging and saving the other monks at the temple that have been corrupted by the being, and stopping the being's influence from spreading past the temple. Characters, there's the player character. They are returning to their home temple after their pilgrimage. There's the base enemies, which are corrupted monks from their home temple. There's the NPC, who is an uncorrupted monk, and they fulfill the ally role and sheds more light on the subject of the being. And then there's bosses. There's the main boss, the antagonist of the being. And then there's also mini bosses, which are basically just buffed enemies that will allow the player to unlock new moves. Quick sequential storyboard. The player begins after a meditation at a respawn idol on their way back home. They walk down and they find notes, and that'll just tell them about the controls. And this is their first hint about the setting when they come across a body. Then they come across a corrupted monk and another body. And once they fight the monk, they learn their first extra move. And the body is going to have a few more clues about the setting. And then once the player arrives at the entrance of the temple, there's another idol for them to rest at. And this will allow them to equip the new ability that they got from the previous monk. And that will encapsulate pretty much the entire core mechanics of the game in the tutorial, first part of the game. Once they enter, they really start the game. They'll meet more enemies in the hallways, and that'll lead into a room of enemies. And in the rooms, there's also going to be container things that entail items and things that tell you more about the lore and the setting, and certain things called story items that will affect the outcome of the story. And then rooms of enemies lead to mini boss rooms, and there are going to be idols in every mini boss room for the player to sleep at afterwards. This cycle can repeat as needed, kind of like a chalice dungeon. Eventually, the player runs into a mini boss carrying a story item and a key, and in the room is a locked door. And if you choose to unlock that door, there's going to be an NPC that gives more information on what happened and how the antagonist can be stopped. The player will then fight one more room of enemies with a couple more items. And then in this room, you either believe the NPC and fight the antagonist, or you choose not to believe them and you fight the NPC instead in order to save and free the antagonist. Playtesting results. I have not playtested, but I have talked about the gameplay and the setting of the world. Originally, it was going to be 2D top-down horror thriller, but I completely changed it now to what you're seeing today. Exploration for lore and pathways. I was going to do a lot more exploration in the game, but in the because of time constraints, I'm not going to be able to. And someone talked me out of that. Also, upgrades through weapons instead. Adding a class system that involves different types of weapons and then coding animations for every single type of weapon and all the things that come through with holding weapons in general was too much due to the time constraints. Same thing goes for a magic fighting system alongside the hand-to-hand combat. I was told to choose one or the other, and I chose the hand-to-hand combat system. That way I could focus on it, and that could be the pure core mechanics of the game. Here is a quick video showing the prototype that I have made thus far. It is just the player character and a single enemy. The enemy is coded to just run up to the player and throw an attack at them right now. Very basic, but what this is showing is the base movement animations, as well as some of the fighting animations. You'll see a dash here coming up soon. I have coded in a parry, however, it hasn't worked in the combat system quite yet, so you won't see that in this video. But most of the core mechanics are here. A lot of the time spent for the tutorial was not just getting this up on the screen, but also building the grounds for the rest of the game if I choose to add more enemies or different types of humanoids and getting the base set up for that. So hope you enjoyed this presentation. I know I had a great time developing it thus far, and I'm looking forward to hearing any comments or suggestions and all the feedback that you have. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great night.